Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news from Washington tonight. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order hitting all foreign vehicles with 25% tariffs.
We're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe.
And Trump said that the 25% would be on top of existing tariffs and they will go into effect April 2nd. He suggested this new executive order will lead to tremendous growth for America's auto industry. And just a few hours earlier, Liberal leader Mark Carney visited our city, kicking off day 4 of his election campaign to unveil a $2 billion proposal to protect the auto industry. CBC's Pratyush Thayal reports.
Canadian auto workers don't just build vehicles, they build Canada.
Starting the southwestern Ontario tour in Windsor, Mark Carney spoke about a threat Trump's tariffs pose to the auto industry here. He promised to build an all-in-Canada manufacturing network.
Today, I'm announcing that the new Liberal government will create the Strategic Response Fund. And this is a $2 billion fund that will protect the jobs of workers affected by President Trump's tariffs. But it'll do much more than that.
The union, representing nearly 2,000 Ford employees, welcomes the announcement, saying Carney's plan of building in Canada is absolutely doable.
We need to build these vehicles or these planes or these ships. We can do it right here in Canada, so we can do it in our plants. So at the end of the day, I think he's going in the right direction when you talk about investment in our own country.
Carney also took the time to visit a local parts manufacturing plant. This, as a part of his message, was about working with the industry to build more car parts in Canada and limit those parts crossing the border. He will also use federal funds to prioritize and procure Canadian-made vehicles. All this to build a fortified Canadian supply chain, from raw materials to finished vehicles. But experts are cautious.
We are not structured currently to have a country-specific automotive supply chain, and that has been intentional. Companies are more competitive when they have access to a larger market. That allows for economies of scale and ultimately allows for North American manufacturers to compete with other parts of the world. So that is the foundation of the industry.
And the problem with the Canadian market is that it's just not that large. In Canada, we buy about 1.4 to 1.6 million cars a year in that order. We make somewhat more than that, but the cars that we make are not necessarily the cars that we buy here.
Carney also spoke about the need to diversify Canada's trade partners. Pratyush Thayal, CBC News, Windsor.
Colette Kennedy joins us now for our first look at weather. Colette, lots of sunshine today. How's it looking into the evening?
Yeah, so nice to get into some of that clearing, right, and enjoy that sunshine. And we have quiet conditions overnight tonight, so we'll get to your short-term forecast. I do just want to show you the jet stream and kind of give you a heads up of what's to come if you have any kind of travel plans within the province, essentially this coming weekend, because we'll have a storm developing here in Western Canada, and as it rides along the jet stream, it's going to push some warmer air over cooler air at the surface, and that could pose some icing problems. More on that coming up, but how about a nice day tomorrow with a high of 13?
Absolutely. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Up next, a new documentary by a Windsor filmmaker is set to premiere next month. And as Dawson Chen explains, it digs into the actions of the online vigilante known as the Creeper Hunter and the fallout.
Shamed. That's the title of a new documentary about men accused of being online creepers. It's the latest film by Windsor-born documentary maker Matt Gallagher. And after 2 years of work, it's set to premiere next month at Hot Docs 2025 in Toronto.
This is by far the most difficult story I've ever worked on. It's dealing with policing and vigilantism and people who were accused of being pedophiles and predators.
The film includes extensive, never-before-seen interviews with Jason Nasser, the Windsor man behind a controversial website and YouTube channel called Creeper Hunter TV. From 2015 to 2020, Nasser posted about his efforts as a video vigilante, working to ensnare and publicly humiliate adults who believed they were communicating with a minor. At its height, Creeper Hunter TV had more than 90 Catch a Predator-style episodes. But Gallagher's film also features extensive interviews with the grieving family and friends of 5 John Does, 5 men who appeared on Creeper Hunter TV and later committed suicide or died by drug overdose.
It's just collateral damage, and I guess I wanted to tell that side of the story. I believe that crimes like pedophilia is one of those things that is very difficult for people to find empathy about or to understand.
Nasser was eventually criminally charged because of his Creeper Hunter activities. Gallagher's film follows the trial and sentencing, which resulted in a judge saying Nasser lacks remorse. That's an assessment Jason Nasser disagrees with.
I don't think I'm remorseless. I feel sorry for them because of the decisions that they made.
According to Gallagher, his film isn't necessarily asking viewers to feel sorry for potential predators, but the film does confront us with the consequences of Creeper Hunter tactics.
I don't ask people to sympathize or not sympathize. What I want people to do is just sort of listen to the stories and come up with their own conclusion.
Shamed will screen at Hot Docs on April 28th and May 2nd. Gallagher is planning other screenings, including potentially at this year's Windsor International Film Festival. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
Firefighters responded to a fire at an encampment in Chatham earlier today. Some folks there have been living in tents. Firefighters were able to clear the site of propane tanks and extinguish the flames, while also warning residents to make sure that they're using propane heaters safely with proper ventilation. There were no injuries in the fire, and the exact cause has not been determined. Turning back to the campaign trail now, while Liberal leader Mark Carney made stops in both Windsor and London, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre spoke in Hamilton, where he took aim at Carney. He accused the Liberal leader of hiding his assets in tax havens.
He thinks that taxes are just for the little people, not for big shot bankers like him. This is exactly the wrong kind of experience we need in a prime minister, and the worst kinds of conflicts of interest.
Poilievre has mentioned Brookfield several times on the campaign trail. Carney was an executive at the asset management company. 2 funds that he co-chaired were registered in Bermuda, but it is not clear whether those funds included any of Carney's personal assets. Carney has called Poilievre a, quote, conspiracy theorist. He says that the funds were registered in Bermuda to avoid double taxation. Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has outlined his plan for taxes if the party forms government. Also speaking in Hamilton, he promised to eliminate the GST on some essential items if elected, and said that he would cut the basic personal exemption on income tax for low and middle income earners.
Our plan helps middle-class folks the most, and the difference is that we've noticed from the other plans that are out there, the Liberals and Conservatives, their plan is one that helps millionaires the most.
Singh said the exemption would help Canadians more than tax cuts promised by Liberal leader Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. The NDP is now a distant third in the polls and faces an uphill battle. Recent numbers show some of the lowest levels of support for the party in years. And Ontario is shaping up to be a big battleground in this campaign. Voters in this province handed Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives a new mandate just last month, and now the federal parties are looking to copy Ford's success. Mike Crawley has the story.
Doug Ford and his Ontario PCs romped to victory on a tightly focused campaign message.
Canada is not for sale. Not to President Trump, not to anyone.
What does Ford's win with this theme during a provincial election mean for the federal election just a few weeks later?
The number one issue driving voter intent in the Ontario provincial campaign was clearly Trump and tariffs. There's a lot of national polling data that would indicate that the same is true now in the federal election campaign, only even more so.
No choice but to hit back.
Ford pitched himself to Ontario voters as the best leader to fight the trade war with the U.S. Strategists of all stripes say the federal leaders have to make a similar pitch.
That is the only issue in this election, is protecting Canada and Trump and tariffs.
Marielle Nader is a consultant who has advised New Democrats across Canada.
If any party tries to make this ballot question other than Trump, then they're going to get drowned out and they're going to be irrelevant.
When voters are looking at Trump and tariffs and they're scared about what's going on, they're voting based on who they think is the best option to take on that threat.
Good to see you guys.
For Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, this means pivoting from the messages he's been hammering away at for more than 2 years.
Situation's changed, and you got to fight the campaign that's ahead of you, not the one that you wanted to fight necessarily.
Affordability in particular.
For Liberal leader Mark Carney, it creates an opportunity.
The fact that he sort of presents as this kind of boring dad, technocrat, smart guy, economist is actually a superpower right now.
Her home was recently taken over.
For NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, the ballot question poses a challenge.
It is about Trump and who's going to be best to stand up to Trump, but reframe it in that who is going to be prioritized in that battle.
It's next to impossible to win a federal election without winning Ontario. Over the past 50 years, the party that took the most seats in this province won every election but one.
It's great to see everyone right back at home.
Workers were in the spotlight nearly every day of Ford's winning provincial campaign. You can already see examples of the federal leaders doing the same. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
In international news, hundreds of people have taken to the streets of Gaza this week to demand Hamas relinquish power. Protesters have been marching and chanting, "Out, out, Hamas, out." Angry demonstrators marched through the streets of Gaza City on Wednesday. The day before, a similar protest took place 10 kilometers north in Beit Lahia. That area has been reduced to rubble since the war started in October 2023. The protest erupted when Israel ordered the evacuation of parts of the city. That order came after members of Islamic Jihad fired rockets at Israel on Monday. Masked men dispersed the crowd using violence, even assaulting some demonstrators. Hamas has accused the demonstrators of being traitors. Canada has listed both Hamas and Islamic Jihad as terrorist organizations. The U.S. Defense Secretary has denied texting war plans to a journalist as part of a group chat. However, The Atlantic magazine has now released text messages that include classified information, including sensitive information like the names of CIA agents. Democrats are demanding resignations. Richard Madden has more.
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt trying to contain the fallout after yet another stunning round of text messages show Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth sharing specific military attack plans in Yemen that inadvertently included a journalist to the secret group chat.
There was no classified information transmitted. There were no war plans discussed.
So in response to those denials, reporter Jeffrey Goldberg published more screen grabs from the group chat showing attack plans were discussed. These messages appear to show the Defense Secretary sharing the timing, the type of aircrafts, and weapons to be used in airstrikes against Houthi militias in Yemen mere hours before it happened. And on the chain were the Vice President, Secretary of State, and other top intelligence leaders, all texting through third-party messaging app Signal.
Obviously, someone made a mistake. Someone made a big mistake and added a journalist. Nothing against journalists, but you ain't supposed to be on that thing.
National Security Advisor Tim Walz has since admitted he accidentally invited Goldberg to their secret group chat. On Capitol Hill, Democrats are furious, demanding resignations.
This text message is clearly classified information. Secretary Hegseth has disclosed military plans as well as classified information. He needs to resign immediately.
As the White House tries to deflect and deny, Democrats are demanding investigations, saying if the app had been compromised by an adversary, the lives of American troops in the operation could have been jeopardized. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
On a lighter note now, if you're a Tulip fan, you may want to consider a trip to India soon. The flowers at Asia's largest tulip garden are now in full bloom. The Indira Gandhi Memorial Tulip Garden sprawls over some 30 hectares, established in 2007 to boost tourism to the area in the spring. And it's since become a major attraction in Indian Kashmir, drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. A live look outside there when we come back, how businesses and workers involved in the oil and gas sector are approaching the election. Stay with us. We told you earlier in the program about that 25% tariff that is promised for foreign vehicles going into the United States. Well, we are receiving some more information from the White House that at this time, auto parts and vehicles that are part of the current North American Free Trade Agreement, they will be exempt of that tariff. We will learn more, and as we do learn more, we will keep you posted. In other local news now, a young advocate from Leamington recently attended the annual Tourette Association of America Advocacy Day on Capitol Hill in Washington. It was an important trip for the 18-year-old who has TS and has been receiving training from the association as a rising leader.
Highlight was just being with people who are just like me. It made me feel at home, honestly.
What were some of those conversations like?
I have echolalia, so I was picking up everyone else's tics. So it was kind of funny. It's like, you have that tick, oh, I have that tick too. Or it'd be like, I'd have a tick, and they'd be like, you gave me that tick. And I'd be like, oops.
And what sort of thing did you learn in DC?
We learned like how to be a resilient leader. We learned a lot of things about Tourette syndrome, like more we learned how to advocate and how to do presentations for schools.
You were 12 years old when you were diagnosed, as we mentioned. What would you say to another 12-year-old who's being newly diagnosed?
I'd probably say buckle up. It's going to be a long ride. Learn as much as you can. Talk about it as much as you can. Advocate. If someone says, oh, what are you doing? Don't just be like, oh, I don't know. Because I used to do that. Someone would say, oh, what are you doing? And I'd just be like, oh, I don't know. I just do this thing.
So if someone were to say that to you now, how would you respond?
I would just say, I have Tourette syndrome. It's like, it's part of the neurodevelopmental system. It occurs in the brain and the nervous system. It means I make movements, sounds I cannot control.
Advocating is obviously something you're very passionate about. Why is it so important to you?
It's so important to me because it took me so long to get diagnosed. And I mean, I know there were a lot of people who it took way longer to get diagnosed, but it took a while, having tics since I can remember. So I just want it to be out there. I want it to be a more known thing so that if a kid starts to tic, it's not like, what's wrong with you? It's like, oh, this could be something like a tic disorder.
U.S. tariffs have prompted Canadians to rally around the country's oil and gas sector. As the federal election campaign kicks off, CBC's Julia Wong traveled to the geographic heart of the industry, Fort McMurray, to hear from businesses and workers there about their priorities for the next government.
So here we have one of the pumps that our clients dropped off.
Oil and gas is the heart and soul of this Fort McMurray heavy equipment repair company. But with the trade war, plans to expand and hire more staff are paused indefinitely.
I've been in McMurray my whole life and I've seen the ups and downs, but this feels different. This feels a lot different and a lot of uncertainty with respects to the tariffs and respects to elections now being called.
An election oil country is watching closely. Corey Coffey wants party leaders to know the stakes are high.
I want to hear how they want to unite Canada. So how do we fit into this national unity, right? What are their plans for increasing the access of our resources to the West Coast and the East Coast?
Alberta sends almost all of its crude oil south of the border.
Pump operators, heavy equipment operators,
And livelihoods in this community rely on the energy sector. At this job fair, the federal party's plans for Canadian energy are key.
The emissions reduction policies that we look to hear from all the major parties. The second probably being carbon pricing, their strategy for that. And then thirdly, as we talk to the tariffs and our economic development and future trade relations with worldwide.
I'd like to see more pipeline come around.
Tariff threats have splintered this country's relationship with the U.S. People here want more Canadian support and certainty.
I would hope from this election or nationally that our population would understand it's a bit of a turning point in Canada's history and maybe its path to prosperity, and understand the importance of oil and gas to our economy and to our prosperity and protecting our sovereignty.
Sovereignty that many see as tied to energy independence, making a ballot box question here: who's best suited to handle this reckoning for Canadian oil and gas? Julia Wong, CBC News, Fort McMurray, Alberta.
For more election coverage and for news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. We'll have you covered and up to date every step of the way. We'll be right back with weather. Colette Kennedy is back with us now for more weather. Colette, I know that you are tracking an ice storm that is expected this weekend. How might that impact folks here?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question so we can kind of explain why, I want to hit on this a little bit. For southwestern Ontario, it looks like any impact would be very limited, if at all. However, this is a developing situation. This is still models looking at where it's going to be setting up, and exactly the timing and placement are still a little bit in flux, so it could have some shifting towards southwestern Ontario, and also just the timing that it's over the weekend, and perhaps a prolonged thing from Friday night towards Sunday. If you have any travel plans taking you especially towards central or cottage country or into eastern Ontario, you want to be monitoring what's happening, because there's already a special weather statement for this event coming on through. So our current temperatures, once with that, we get that sunshine in there, it helps a little bit, still below seasonal, but 6 degrees for that current reading, much cooler there, just above freezing in Sarnia. And winds just keeping so much a part of the story. So we get those winds kind of easing tonight and tomorrow morning, and then they're going to be ramping up from the southwest again. However, that's going to help us with picking up these temperatures and getting them back, not just to seasonal, but actually a bit above. So we've got the clear skies tonight, so it makes for a chilly night, some flurries off in eastern Ontario, but dry conditions for us. Then tomorrow, a cold front will be coming in late in the day. So we get sun early into the afternoon, expect increasing cloudiness, and then a stray shower is possible. I put about a 30% chance of precipitation in. I really think it's not much more than a kind of stray or isolated shower that can move through our skies. Friday, still dealing with the cloud cover. However, it's later on Friday, this next system along this warm front, when you get this warmer air overriding cooler air at the surface, that's when we get into this risk of freezing rain. So we could have a little mix or some ice pellets at times, mostly because of the temperatures. I'm anticipating this is just showery activity late on Friday, but see what happens. All this area in pink can make for some very treacherous driving conditions. That's Friday night, so leading into the weekend, and then it will likely return kind of off and on into the weekend with that prolonged area, perhaps closer towards eastern Ontario. Our forecast winds, I mentioned lighter tonight, but then picking up tomorrow afternoon. Be aware of that. Be aware it's going to feel like about -5 to -6 tomorrow morning. And then I did say I'm expecting the temperatures to be picking up. I was serious about that, Katerina.
Yeah, when I saw that 21, my eyes popped. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Colette. And thanks to you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Good night.